Welcome back to Conversations in the Word. My name is Nick Funderburk, and I am the discipleship pastor here at First Baptist Dothan. And today I am joined by two friends, Cindi and Ashley. Could y'all introduce yourselves real quick?
Yes, I'm Cindi Ramsey, and I grew up at First Baptist, and I'm involved in women's ministry now.
Okay. And
Hey,
hi.
I'm Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
I also go to First Baptist. Got
No
a couple
way.
kids.
Shocker.
Beckett, Emma, Avery, Kate, and what was else?
What do you do?
So right now I serve in women's ministry, and I teach 3-year-old Sunday school class. I co-teach.
Yeah.
I'm room mom, really is what it is for 3-year-olds, but it's where I serve consistently.
I heard
and it's
that
a
class
blast.
is the place to be.
It's a blast. We have good snacks, good stories. It's
Yeah.
a good time.
Tell me a little bit about your history with First Baptist. What brought you both here? Ashley, start with you since Cindi.
Okay, so we came here for my husband's job in 2019, and we came from New Orleans after being there for 10 years. So it was like
New
total
Orleans to
culture
Dothan.
shake.
Complete
Total.
culture shock?
Yep, change, shock. What did I say?
Culture shake?
What's that too?
Yeah.
Everything got shaken up, but in the best way. We adore Dothan. So happy to be here. Humbled that God brought us to First Baptist.
And I heard it was God in a pie or cake or something like that.
A pound cake, some warm bread with cinnamon butter from Tammy Dillard. So just God uses all the carbohydrates.
If nothing else, Dothan has better baking
No
than
doubt.
New Orleans, and that's a bold statement.
Hey, except the beignets.
King cake.
We can
like
talk.
king
That's
cake?
a whole nother podcast. Honestly, I do.
That's for the food podcast. That's the FBC Dothan food podcast coming out 2024. Sorry, I did not mean to slip that.
I'll be back to discuss that. But yes, love king cake, but very specific kinds and from specific bakeries.
Awesome. Cindi, tell me about your history at First Baptist.
I was 5,
Oh, no, wow.
about to start first grade. And so what made me decide is really, I had very little to do with it. My parents.
Your parents.
We moved here from Albany, Georgia, which is not quite as dramatic a move, but it's just an hour and a half down the road. But we've been here since 1974.
That's awesome. And were you baptized here?
I was.
How old were you?
I was 4th grade. I believe it was the summer after 4th grade because I became a Christian at camp, one of the groups that went from here to Lake Forest in Mississippi.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, I know the people who run that camp.
Oh,
That's so cool.
it's a great place.
And then you grew up in Dothan and left, I assume, for college. And
Yes, I left. I graduated high school in 86 and went to Furman for undergraduate. So that was my first time out of state. I was ready. I was ready to get out and see different things, and then ended up back in Alabama for
Lord brought you
graduate
back
school.
here.
Yes.
And so tell me, you both serve in the women's ministry now. Can you tell me a little bit about your roles there and what made you initially want to start serving in women's ministry?
Okay, well, that's, like a
There's probably a lot
question
there.
like that has a story behind it. But the interesting thing, so we had just been through 2020, so everything was pretty much shut down.
Mm-hmm.
But we were also already in a leadership transition. We were looking for the next, not me, but, the church, we were trying to fill that role. And it's sort of overwhelming to think about one person stepping into those shoes. In my mind, I looked at all of these people that I had looked up to, older women who were just big personalities and so much more, depth, of course, spiritual maturity. But I did not feel like I was qualified. So actually what brought 3 of us together, Ashley was sort of the little matchmaker behind the scenes, but she brought 3 of us together to pray about maybe co-leading together. And that's how it all began. We prayed and we parted ways, and then we met a week later, and nobody knew who was going to say yes or no. But God really gave us a peace about leading together. And I mean, I would never do it any other way.
So who all was involved in that?
So that was in 2021. It was Emily Gibson, our youth pastors,
Trace.
At that time, he was
Now
youth
our
pastor,
family pastor.
Right. And Deanna Skinner, who is one of my dear, dear friends, and then myself, Cindi Ramsey, and that was almost 3 years ago, but we've learned so much.
Ashley, what led you to kind of reach out to these three women and encourage them to serve in this role?
So I knew all of them fairly well individually, and I knew that everybody has a lot on their plate already. So I figured if I asked one of them, it would be a hard pass, but kind of thought maybe if we can do this together, it'd be an easier thing to take on. And fortunately, the Lord was kind and gracious and we all felt like he had given us the capacity to go in together. And I think capacity has been a word that we've used a lot. So we were all in very different stages of life. We all, some of us have small children, some of us have grown children. Since this has started, we've had grown children get married. We've had Emily, who had baby Parker. So when one person didn't have quite as much capacity, time, energy, any of the things, the other people were there to step in and make sure that everything continued to run smoothly.
So the women's ministry is not, it's changed over the last few years. From the discussions that you guys had and where you felt the Lord leading you, what would you say now is kind of the purpose of the women's ministry?
Women's ministry, you think back, it's not really something that's outlined in the Bible. It's not something that's mandatory, but I think that it is also a space for, there are unique ways that women can, either through evangelism or counseling or leading by example, just very effectively and uniquely to other women. So even if it's not a formal category on the church website, it's probably going on if it's a healthy church. So I think that is something that I really didn't have I thought of women's ministry growing up as more, one strong leader and she has her team, but it's events on the calendar and themes and, I had a lack of understanding. I think that we took it back to, and in my mind, this was because I didn't have a big picture of what it actually was, that it is word focused, which we hear every Sunday, word and gospel focused. We want women to grow in their ability to read the word and apply it accurately and then live it out.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the focus, but we also focused on growth in all the areas that we like prayer and serving. And so it's a space that is dedicated to that. We very much asked, what is the mission of the church? Like, what are our pastors verbalizing about what they want First Baptist to be like? Well, we want to relate that in different ways to women.
Yeah. Could you tell me, maybe both of you, tell me a little bit about how you have been developed in the faith, not necessarily through this specific time of serving in women's ministry, but across your lifetime, maybe some ways that you've been discipled, some ways that God has prepared you for this role?
So I think for me, over the years, I have, just because of my personality, I do well working alone. I studied alone. I like to do things. I think I was more focused on my personal growth, me and God. And when I came back from college and then as a married and young parent, I began to catch on that there is a whole lot more to the picture than just me and God and my Bible. Yeah. And so I think that was a big shift in my mind, partly due to me just looking around me and seeing what was going on at church. But there were a few people that I think of two examples, and I'm not going to name current because I could leave somebody out easily, but there was an older woman, probably in her 80s, named Sarah Jean Johnston, who was a longtime member here. And even when I had little babies, she would know our birthdays. She would be praying for us. I think she prayed for everybody in the church. And I remember asking her how she did this, and she was like, honey, I wake up at 4 a.m. now, but I didn't always when I had little children. But she didn't make it like this unattainable thing, but it was just based on where she was in life. Yeah. That is what she did for her church.
Yeah.
And then another woman, Laurel Griffith, was a community group leader, but we literally walked around her yard and in her neighborhood and talked about raising boys. She had 3 that she had raised really well. And we had 1, but he was the only boy between me and my sister. Yeah. So there were times we just didn't know what to do or whether we were doing okay. Yeah. So I think of those 2 ladies, and then, of course, just so many more.
And those weren't formal. That was just, those are women that you encountered regularly because you were invested. I mean, you were invested in the life of the church and not just trying to do sort of disciple yourself.
Right. Laurel was intentional. She made a point to invite me. It was never anything fancy like a meal or anything like that, but we literally walked or met for coffee. Yeah. And so she really was intentional about it, but It was very informal. And I heard her teach on Sundays. So, I got that, but it was really helpful.
We often sit in the shade of trees not planted by us, and women's ministry is an example of that. There are faithful, godly women who have come before where we are right now in this season in 2023, and it's a result of their hard work, of their prayer, of all the foundation that they've laid for us.
And I love how you ended with prayer, especially when you start never having done this before and you're not really sure what it's supposed to look like. I think that we started with prayer. There was so much that I didn't know, and we always start, I never want to get away from that prayer dependence because my best ideas can just fall apart if they aren't bathed in prayer, filtered through God's heart, and also other people that have wisdom and know things that I don't know. Yeah. So I think that has been where we've really, I always want to start with prayer, and it's teaching me in my own life, rather than make my list for the day. I love a good list.
Yeah.
But the word and prayer, and, you can never go wrong. And I felt like at the end of year 1, I was doubting. I was like, well, we're not really doing anything new and different. We know what calendar works for women. We've gotten feedback on that. But should we try to do anything different? And I came across just the best book.
Great. We love book recommendations on here, so let's have it.
So we'll put in a plug for a Word-Filled Women's Ministry. And that is one that I read it halfway through the second year. And it was like, okay, I just took a deep breath. And I was like, these are women who have been in ministry for a really, really long time. And we don't have to reinvent things every year. We stay the course. And God makes things look different and interesting on his own. Things never go quite as expected. So that's always fun. But that's where we need to camp out. And we don't have to do anything different.
Yeah. God has built his church on this rock since Christ.
Right.
And it's not changed.
You didn't ask this, but it just kind of triggered something in my brain, but just something very concrete that I've learned from the women in this church has been you have a problem, you have a bad day, whatever the case is, and a lot of people kind of tap you on the shoulder and they say, well, I'll pray for you. What I've seen and what I've learned is that when they say that, they say, let's stop right now and let's pray exactly for what it is that we need to pray about. And when I tell you, praying together, just in that bond and knowing that it's not just this little platitude, thoughts and prayers, it is a legitimate, I am coming to the Father with this burden for my sister, or whatever it is. That is just so concrete, and it's so simple, and it's actually doing what we say we're going to do.
How can we build those relationships in the church? And how can we build up discipleship in the church? What are some things that the women's ministry is doing, or some goals that they have to kind of help establish those types of relationships where we feel comfortable encountering one another with prayer requests and actively praying for one another?
Yeah. So I would say availability and transparency. You can't just slip in, slip out. Hey, how are you? We're great. How are you? Good. You know, cute shoes. Like, you have to be available. You get what you give, and you have to give people the opportunity to know you. And when I say know you, like actually love you and know you and know things about you.
Yeah. What are some ways that women can excel in serving the church, including like this idea of hospitality? What are some ways that women build up the church through serving? And what are some ways that maybe we as a church can help women thrive in those sort of roles?
Those were a lot of questions.
I know, that's so many questions. Hey, just pick your favorite one and go with that.
Okay. Well, the question about hospitality is a way not only to connect peers, but also to connect generations. So there's a little bit of that can go on, because a lot of hospitality can be taught. It may not be what you think it is. So when I moved to town, I, like many of us, we want the house to be clean, the junk to be at least shoved in a closet or under a bed, for the food to be perfect or tasty.
Break out the fine china.
Yes. I mean, I think we've gotten away from that. Although we did at Thanksgiving, my mom was very happy that we brought out the fine china.
You got to save it for some occasions.
You save this fine china. But, you know, even if the laundry is on the table, and I've done this recently, and I had somebody else with me, you know, there were babies running around the house, and the person I visited, we had her china teacups and tea and little, you know, people crawling around on the floor and coming up and tugging on mom. And so it's a different kind of connecting there. You can't do Bible study with that, but we can share prayer requests and we can pray. And so hospitality, I love the Gospel Comes with a House Key. I'm going to put in, I love those.
There's another great book reference.
So we may drop a few of those, but Rosaria Butterfield, it's hospitality is more than setting the table. Like, it is going to knock on the neighbor's door and you don't know really much about them and how it's going to go. It's just inviting people into your home, regardless of where the laundry is or whether you have a meal. You might make a sandwich, but it's about just being present and available.
Ashley, I think you guys really excel at having a hospitable home. What are some ways that kind of help you be more comfortable having people over? Because I think one of the issues that most people have is just it feels like a burden to open up your home. But what I've found is the more we do it, the less of a burden it feels. So maybe that's the same for you.
So a couple things. One, I have the best housemaid. His name is Taylor Rutland. So that helps.
He'll clean before the guests leave.
And it's a joy to him, and in turn, it's a joy to me to receive that. No, I think for us personally, living in New Orleans for so long with no family, and it was like do or die. If you cook for them, they will come. If you cook good food, they'll definitely come.
Good rule of life.
And also, it's just one of the things that I appreciate about the people that come into our home is that at least they don't act like the chaos really bothers them or deters them from coming. And if you're going to come to our house, like, it is going to be chaotic to an extent. We have, 3 energetic children, and they just want to be a part, and Beckett's going to sit and he's going to listen to every single word that you have to say. And,
you just have to do it.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to add something that I have recently become more aware of with hospitality is it's not just opening your home. Like, hospitality is opening up your time and your personal space. So it could happen if you're not really comfortable having people in your home for whatever reason.
Yeah.
If it's a small space, whatever, you can meet on the walking trail, you can meet at a coffee shop, but it's just that. So hospitality can happen away from home. Like, to me, it's just about inviting people into your personal space, and that takes effort for some of us. But
true,
it's rewarding and it's sweet. And we need it.
But connecting that to the church is, when you are in the presence of a great host or with somebody with the gift of hospitality, and it's just that feeling of, I see you, I love you, let me take care of you. And we want people to feel like that if they come to something at church, women's ministry or not.
Switching gears back to women's ministry for a bit, what are some ways that we as a church or maybe the pastors and staff might be able to help the women's ministry grow and help women grow in their ways they can serve the church?
Well, I think it is, you can definitely encourage women's ministry in ways, but I think that all the women of the church are watching. And when we in leadership are encouraged, it overflows. So really, it's kind of all related, I think. I think that some things that immediately come to my mind are when you ask questions, how are we doing? Yeah. Maybe what's next? How did the last event go? What are you thinking about doing next? So asking questions. Encouraging many leaders, like all lay leaders or many lay leaders, are just doing it because they love the church. They're not on a salary. And so I know for me, words of affirmation, just like a genuine thank you, or y'all did a really nice job of this. And our staff already does this. So
I know as a pastor, I could be doing that a lot more because we really are more grateful than I think for the ministry, and the way that this is being led.
Well, that definitely comes across. And I think, so I'm in my 50s and our staff is much younger. And so I really appreciate that. But it really does go a long way. And you already said, just praying and letting us know that you're praying for us. Because we need prayer for leadership, for the transitions that happen from year to year. And
I think just in general, keeping a pulse of what's going on. Yeah. Our pastors are males, we're females, and so we're not always in the same room. And when we have our events, that's usually not the case, and that's on purpose. And it's a beautiful thing because it gives us space to, do our girly things that we like to do. But just caring about what Bible studies are we doing? Yeah. What is your speaker going to teach on? And just kind of help keep us on track and focused. And the main thing, because we need our brothers, we can get lost in the weeds sometimes on, okay, how many round tables can we fit in 8 chairs and this many all those kind of things that, there's space to care about those things, but just help us keep the word and the mission of what we're doing on the forefront.
That reminds me of a quote that I heard at Lifeway Women Leadership Forum, linking arms, talking about brothers and sisters in Christ, male and female, that linking arms counteracts blind spots in ministry. And I think that's so valuable because we don't see everything, even as individuals, but then, different ages, male, female. So it really does, God uses that back to the body. The body of Christ. Yeah. All the parts are needed.
So in terms of continuing to grow as a women's ministry, what are some things, Cindi, maybe you're doing that is helping prepare for the future?
One thing that we've tried to do is, I guess after the first year, once I got my bearings, and we started talking about, okay, how long can this group of people do these jobs? Yeah. And we have a team of 3, but then we also have someone that leads serve team, prayer team, the events that we do a few times a year, food and decor and that sort of thing. So people grow tired. And so I tried to really start the second year encouraging people to train their replacements, so to speak. Yeah. But it's more than about training skills. It's letting them be in the group, in the room, in the discussions, and just sharing the work, but also seeing it done by somebody that is in leadership. And so it goes back to discipling. It's not just about getting the tasks done. It's about the relationships, how you communicate with other people when things don't go as planned, how you handle that. And so there's just a lot of grace involved, and we need a lot of fruit of the Spirit going on to get all that done. But it's really been, and I think that the people that we have leading besides us have done a good job of that. And so we're going to see how that carries us into the future.
What's an important word that you would want to share to the women of our church?
What I would say is that God has given us minds to think, and he wants us to use them. He wants us to study, and I'm like preaching to myself just as much as anybody else. But I am always going to take the easier route. So if I can pop a podcast on in the car, that was ironic. If I can listen to my other favorite, preacher or Bible teacher, whatever, like that's so easy to push play and go. But that's not giving God my best. God has given us his word, and he's given us the Holy Spirit. And I think it's important that we be intentional about not watching a 30-second reel on Instagram and getting our little spiritual tidbit for the day, but really investing and knowing that it's worth it, and that even if we don't see the fruit of the studying that we do or the time that we spend now, that it's not wasted.
I think the thing that I would just want to be sure people are thinking about is just connecting. Yeah. From the leadership team, we're going to be inviting and trying to pull people in. But if the women of our friends in the church, our sisters, would be looking for these attempts, we're not perfect, but we're going to try to get the word out if something's going on. And so, I guess being intentional about, if you don't like to show up by yourself, find someone, or please reach out to us or even the church office and say, I need someone to meet me. We really do want to take care of our women. And so the other half of that is just for them to be willing to show up, get the church app. We have all the church's events on there. It's an excellent, very easy to use app. And this is coming from a
shout out to Megan,
55-year-old who has to often ask my children for help. We have reply cards that have, a little check the box. If this is something you might be interested in, we're not going to hold you to a commitment, but it has a place for phone numbers and contact information. And so I guess just make it easy for us to find you again, because we really do. We promise not to bug you, but we really do want to be sure that we know when, things are good or things are hard, how to encourage you.
Well, before we go, are there any resources? This is always fun that you guys, I know we've already dropped two. The two we dropped were The Gospel Comes with the House Key by Rosaria Butterfield. The Word-Filled Women's Ministry?
Word-Filled Women's Ministry by Gloria Furman and Kathleen B. Nielsen. But I have a book that is my favorite that I've read, or I listened to it on Audible, but it's called Gospel Bound, Living with Resolute Hope in an Anxious Age.
Yeah.
It's a collection of stories about how people are not just preaching their beliefs, which truth is important, not to compromise that, but living out the gospel in ways that are really attractive to people that might be atheists or, for sure lost. And so anyway, that is the best evangelism a lot of times. And then Disciple Her is by Candy Gallaty, and I'm actually 2/3 of the way through, but we're really looking at how to do small groups in a way that we could replicate that. Mm-hmm. And so this is something new-ish.
These are a little bit more formal type of discipleships, which are, so if that's something that you are looking for, or if you've never been discipled and you just, you want a clear kind of guide of how to get into that type of relationship and how to do that, probably a great resource to look into. Would you agree?
Yes, and I think that I know of at least one other person that has said they're interested, and so if you're interested, find me and we'll figure it out together.
Ashley, do you have any resources?
I'm going to throw a curveball.
You already said the Bible, so you can't say it again.
The Bible counts for sure. That's number one. Here's my curveball. My curveball is this. You're getting discipled all day, every day, whether or not you realize it. And so I would recommend going through all the accounts you follow, all the people on Facebook maybe you're friends with, but not really, and get rid of the ones that are feeding you things that are untrue.
So it's the unresource recommendation.
So
remove
go
those
to the
resources.
chopping block.
That's right.
Seriously, because it is getting in your mind whether or not you realize it. Like, do I like insert whatever celebrity? Sure. Is that giving me, is that filling my mind with truth, beauty, and goodness? No. Okay, well then why am I just taking that in all day, every day? So, hot take on your question.
Hey, and that one requires as little work as possible.
Yeah.
So that's the easiest, that's the best resource.
Yeah, go through those blue check marks and really think about, is this promoting fruit or not?
I love it.
And while you're at it, find First Baptist Women's Ministry on Facebook and Instagram. We don't post every day, but that's another way to hear about good things.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast that we do called Conversations in the Word. We'll see you next time.